What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick.
My name is Juan Quintanilla.
And this is the deep dive. And this is such a bittersweet deep dive, honestly, because in some ways, if you don't know, today is actually Juan's last day here with us at Hickory Flats, at least as an official staff member or official appointed clergy member. But we are excited for his next step in ministry. He's going to Cardiac United Methodist up in LJ.
That's correct.
And so he'll be the head pastor there. So we're excited for them. We're excited for him. But we are sad to lose a friend who became such a good friend over such a short amount of time.
Well, I have been privileged to be in this church. And I'm telling you, this is a very friendly church, very open church. Like we say, open hearts, open doors, and open minds. So it's a church that serves the community, and you can feel the spirit when you visit the church. It's just so loving people and friendly people.
Thank you for that. And today you got a chance to preach your last sermon, and you were talking about Matthew. So we're going to get into that right after we kind of roll the credits. So
all right.
Let's do it real quick.
Okay. Well, I had the privilege to talk about Matthew because he was an outsider, outcast, usually because he had a job. And that job, it was not well been seen by the community because they feel the oppression of the Romans, and his job was really representing the Roman Empire. And so the interesting thing is the people didn't like him because he was a Jew, and so they saw as a betrayal. Hey, you're working for the enemy, and
I think you said what he works for the IRA and today. Everybody, I heard a few chuckles behind me on that one. That was good.
And so the salary of the tax collectors was you have to get, for instance, 1,000 denarii a week. So you cover the basic. Whatever extra is for you. It's in your pocket. So they can charge whatever they want to charge. So they abuse that way. That's the reason people still they don't like them, because they were abusers in a sense.
Right. So you kind of have the story where you kind of start where Jesus calls Matthew and basically went up to him and said, "Hey, come follow me." And he's like, okay, but you kind of dove into maybe some of the why, and you used a cool painting. Can you tell us about the painting?
Well, the painting is made by Caravaggio.
Okay.
Caravaggio was an Italian painter who was his first. That was his first job to do this commission painting for the Church of San Luigi, the French, which was for the French people in Rome, and so he was his first painting, which is a large painting, 10 by 10 feet. So it was a lot of work to do. So he hired people from the street, and he was criticized by that because, the people on the street, they're not good models or good people. You have to kind of professional models, but he didn't care. He just chose people, and he has to imagine in his mind before where he went, because the people have to stay there for hours so he can paint that. So it's a lot of work to do that.
So did they paint as well, or were they kind of holding the canvas, or?
Well, no. The people you're gonna paint about the passage of Jesus called Matthew. So he has to hire some people from the streets to play the Jesus, the Peter, the Matthew,
okay.
the five guys. So they have to sit over there, wherever he say, okay, you're going to be focused on the money. You Matthew, you're going to point to himself, and you Jesus, you're going to. So he has in his mind. So from his mind, put it in the canvas.
They were.
But they have today for hours.
Yeah,
I mean, it was not.
Just don't move.
But I think he took advantage of putting the darkness. If you see, half of the pictures is almost darkness, and because he wanted to focus on Jesus and Matthew. That was the main message.
Yeah, and I really liked how you kind of pulled a a couple of different, because you used Michelangelo's art as part of it as well, because you could see like the hand postures were very similar and stuff like that.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I wonder if that was some sort of like ode to the other artist or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not sure which one happened first.
They influence each other.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, Caravaggio used this system, and because they didn't use it in the Renaissance, so it was kind of new to focus on the darkness, and so the darkness make the much to appreciate art when you see the contrast.
Yeah. Well, in the painting, one of the things you kind of see from Matthew when he was called is the artist kind of portrays it that he's kind of like pointing around the table almost of like, maybe not me, why not him or whatever. Like he was trying to kind of pull off the responsibility. And you started kind of talking about how we kind of do a similar thing, but you started by saying, you know, Matthew was going, well, why me? And then you said, well, why not you? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it really got me thinking even personally of like, you know, how many times has God called me and I'm sure other people listening will probably relate to it, is like you feel you're being asked to do something or God's called you to do something and you're like, I'm not qualified enough for that. You know what I mean? Like, you know, we see guys like Moses in the Bible do it as well, where God was like, hey, you're going to do this to my people in Egypt. And he was like, I have a speech impediment, dude. Like, I stutter. You don't want me to doing this. You know what I mean? He's like, I got you. Don't worry. But what would you say to people who maybe feel inadequate to serve God?
Well, I think God sees the potential that what you can become.
Yeah.
So he sees the future in you. And so when he called you, he as well, he's going to equip you, equip you. Just like he did it with Matthew for 3 years, he will equip you. And he has some skill. Matthew has some skill. He can read, he can work with numbers, he can write. So he already has some skill. But it's interesting that God used those skills that he already have to write the Gospel of Matthew, which is the longest evangelist gospel, 28 chapters. And he quotes a lot of things from the Bible. I think the Old Testament, like 70 passages from the Old Testament, more than Mark and Luke and John put it together.
Wow.
So, because he was called Levi in the other gospel, because the passage that I used, it was Matthew, but you have the same passage in Luke and in Mark, but there is called Levi. So he has two names. One is Hebrew, Levi, and the other Matthew in Greek.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. You know, I think sometimes we often don't, I don't know if give ourselves enough credit, because it's not a pride thing for sure, but you know, I think we have a hard time maybe seeing the potential that God sees in us, you know, because we know the things that we think about that maybe other people don't, or we know the places where we failed and maybe don't have enough confidence to kind of get back up and dust ourselves off. So I think because we know all that, we have a hard time separating that and seeing ourselves the way God might see us through those glasses of like, look what you can do. Look what you have learned already.
Yes.
And now how are you going to use that to glorify me? You know what I mean?
Right.
But I do love, I love the ideas that we're not expected to be perfect in it, you know, and that's something I think the disciples show very clearly is they're not perfect. You know, they were just committed to following and they work through their issues. They work through their doubts. They work through their spontaneity. They work through their questioning. They just kind of kept pushing through, and then God kept growing them. Jesus kept growing them along the way. So
it was the training. Jesus was training them, and he was correcting them as well.
Right.
So it's a process. You always in a process.
Yeah. You know, there's been so many people that along the way we've kind of asked, like, hey, would you teach a Bible study or something? And they're like, I don't know enough. And it's like, you don't have to know everything. Like, there's resources, and be open and honest about that. And that's something I think I would remind all of us is not necessarily every time, you know, Nick comes to you and asks you to do something at the church that you have to say yes because you've already been on, but more of like, there are ways to be grown into it. There are ways to be trained. Look inside and see for yourself. Like, do you think you have some gift or propensity to potentially do this as well? You know, I know when I first got called into, when I first got asked to be in youth ministry, I was like, I'm just a kid, man. I can throw a football with them, but you want me to teach them about Jesus? You know what I mean?
That's a challenge.
But I grew in that, you know, the practice and the repetition and stuff like that really challenged me. And I had to learn how to write a lesson, and then I had to learn how to deliver the lesson, and then I had to learn how to counsel kids and stuff like that. So it is, I like what you said. It's training, and you're going to start not at your finished level, you know, just like anything, you got to work at it. So that's good. You also, or did you have something you were going to jump in?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Sorry, I thought I heard you about to go, but you said something along the lines of when kind of people were considering themselves is that humans are afraid of the darkness. You said they don't want to deal with their own darkness. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, humans, we are afraid of the darkness. That's the reason we use lights at night. So it's something about darkness. We don't know what we're going to find.
Yeah.
But Carl Jung used the term darkness or shadows, that the humans are dealing with some stuff that we don't want to deal with it. But the only to heal is to deal with it. And one way to say it is when for instance, when Paul says, the things that I don't want to do, that's the thing that I do. But so he called it sin.
Yeah.
And sometimes we are not aware of that sin. For instance, when we talk about sin, we talk about acts or actions. So forgive me my sins or the things that I have done. But to acknowledge the nature of sin is different than sins. Is, for instance, you can take all the apples of the tree, but the tree is an apple tree, so it will produce apples.
Right.
So when John Wesley talk about sins, he talk about sins, okay, there are some actions, but those actions come from the nature that we are sinful creatures.
Right.
And we acknowledge that we are sinful creatures. That's when holiness starts to work on you. Because we don't only go through the process of justification, it's the forgiveness of the sin. But holiness go beyond the forgiveness of sin. He wants to give us a new nature.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason when I say we don't want to deal with our own sinful nature.
Yeah.
And so we just bury it. And no, the well is to be healed.
Yeah. And you kind of close that by saying Jesus is the doctor of the soul, you know.
He mentioned himself, I'm the doctor, that's the reason that I'm with sinners.
Right.
But the Pharisees, they didn't say, hey, we're not sinners, we are the separate ones, and so they were blind.
Yeah.
But they were in darkness.
There was a guy who did like a spoken word poetry one time, and I think his name was Jefferson Bethke or something like that. And the way he put it was that church is not like a museum of the righteous, but it's a hospital for the broken.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
I agree.
And I think that's kind of the similar line that you're kind of saying here is that, like, you know, we have to acknowledge our sinful nature inside of us. You know, that sometimes ask us to do things that we don't want to do, as Paul suggests, but in those things, like when we come up across them, when we are encountering them, is to bring Jesus into it, and He can help us in and through those things. Not that we'll never mess up, but that He'll kind of keep working to change our souls.
Right. So it's a process, as I said, and the only way is we come to Jesus. But as well, Jesus come to us.
Yeah.
Jesus say, follow me, but Jesus is willing to go to your world too. So that's the reason he got to see Matthew's house and to see his friends and the other sinners. And so I'm the doctor. I'm here to heal you.
Yep.
And
what a call to us as the church. You know, because I think sometimes we're like, oh, we need to get these people to be just like us or whatever, but it really feels like because his focus was so much on finding the sinners. You know what I mean? Not that people at the church aren't sinners. We are all sinners. But do you know what I mean? Like to have that focus of like, sometimes we get too insulated and too focused on, you know, the people that are here that we forget to be focused on the people out there. And it's just an interesting, and that's something I feel like you are really good at reminding people to be about. And that's something I've even over these 6 months, you've really continuously kind of brought that, you know, even when we're talking, like maybe not as intense things as, you know, finding the homeless or whatever, but more even like, how are we welcoming new people? You know, we got to consider what they're looking at. You know, you have a good, you're good at bringing that to the forefront. So
and that's the mission of the church.
That's
the
right.
church is not for itself.
Yeah.
The church is for the community.
That's right.
So we are an instrument to reach the community because we are the body of Christ. And
Right.
what Jesus was doing all the time, he was not in the temple, on the synagogue. He was in the fields, in the homes, in the valleys, just being with people and parties and listen to them and understand them and accept them and offer forgiveness. So
yeah,
Jesus took God outside of the temple, put it available in houses.
right. He showed that,
In
and
works.
that was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, you said two words kind of as we've been talking that really kind of stuck out to me. You said process and training, and to me that's such a good reminder of the journey we're on, even, or I mean, really the process of faith is starting at one spot, but having God mold you into another spot. You know, to be more like Him and stuff like that. And that's something I feel like I really took away from the message today is that, you know, if God's calling, you know, one, who are we to not say yes? But two is He's calling you for a reason, you know, and not your reason might not be the same as anybody else's. You know, you were talking about Matthew being a tax collector and all that stuff. And there was other tax collectors that Jesus called as well, but like, having that skill set, that analytical of a brain and stuff like that, that's important, you know, but also Peter's maybe over exuberance at times is important, you know, like it kind of builds the team for disciples, but also like each of us have something God has started building in us, starting to build in us. And it's our job to help kind of flesh those things out and trust God that He gave us some of our tendencies and some of our mannerisms and stuff like that for a reason. You know, I find myself to be kind of an analytical person as well, but there's a purpose in that, you know, and I have to continue to learn sometimes I'm like, oh, this just bogs me down because I'm thinking way too hard about it. But sometimes it also helps me in my discernment time, you know, because I've had a chance to think through these things and stuff like that.
That's good. That's good. Yes.
I guess just for anybody listening or for the sake of our conversation is trust God to use you with what you have. It's not about you being exactly like Dave Benson or Juan or me or whatever. Like it's about finding what God has uniquely given to you.
Right.
And trusting Him to build that up more within you.
Right. We should not compare to others.
That's right.
Just compare your past with your present.
Right.
Just compare yourself.
Yeah.
And you're going to see, as you grow, you're going to see, okay, I'm getting better in this. And thanks to the experience, mistakes, and everything, but it's, as I said, following Jesus. When Jesus says, follow me, is a mandatory, but the word follow me is called the present active. It says, continue to follow me.
Yeah.
It's not one time you follow all the time. But as well as said, he said, follow me, but really you allowed Jesus to come to your house, to your soul, and work in you, and little by little you will be growing to His likeness. Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, Juan, thank you for coming on the podcast, and thank you for helping us dive deep into it. You know, since this is your last podcast, at least as official with us right now, is there anything that you would tell the church, like any parting words that you'd say, just remember to do this, or be encouraged by this, or what?
Well, just continue to be a friendly and open church, because the people are looking for places that they feel safe. But don't forget, we're here to accomplish a missions, and the mission field is outside of the four walls of the church.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you, Juan. And one last question. Who was your favorite staff member to work with? No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. I won't make you do that. But for real, though, we have been immensely blessed by your presence here with us. And just thank you for the time. And it would have been real easy for you to kind of coast these 6 months and just kind of sit in your office and kind of do whatever. But you went to work, and that speaks volumes to everybody. So thank you. Thank you for being diligent, and we'll just keep praying for each other. Keep praying for Hickory Flat, that we continue to do what God's calling us. We'll pray for you and Cardiac, that God will bless that relationship, and that y'all will make a difference in LJ and all that good stuff. And it's been a pleasure. It really has.
A pleasure too. And it has been a pleasure to work with you as a staff, as an administrator of the church. You have those gifts, and may God continue to use it for His glory.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching. If you got any questions or anything that you'd like to say, if there's any notes you have for Juan, you can drop them in the chats below, and he'll see those, and we'll see those as well. If you got any questions about what we just talked about, we'd love to continue that conversation. Again, you can drop those comments below on the Facebook or the YouTube. And without further ado, we'll catch you guys next time.
All right. God bless you. Bye-bye.